Hello and welcome to Same Cast Different Day podcast. I am Martel. Thank you all for tuning in to this very special edition of Same Cast Different Day podcast. I have the pleasure to sit down with a man who wants to make real change. Dakari Larriett is the son of a U.S. veteran and a public school teacher. He is committed to volunteering. His candidacy for the U.S. Senate is driven by injustice he faced from a false arrest in 2024. Dakari has built a successful career as a corporate leader while also managing a pet care business he launched from his garage. That's so amazing, y'all. And before we get into this interview, I want to play a quick clip about Dakari Larriett, who is the author of the book that we're going to be talking about, also called Don't Flush. So let's take a look at this clip.
Mr. Larriett.
Good morning,
Good morning.
representatives and senators. Thank you so much for this opportunity and facilitating this discussion. My name is Dakari Larriett, and
Yeah, I played the wrong clip. What is going on with me today? I played the wrong clip. Just give me 1 second. All right, so I got the right clip. So here we go. Here is Dakari Larriett.
Imagine this. You're driving home, sober, clear-headed, and suddenly you're under arrest. You passed every test. You proved your innocence. It doesn't matter. You're cuffed, jailed, humiliated. That's what happened to activist, Senate candidate, and author Dakari Larriett in his book, Don't Flush. From a false arrest to a political awakening. Available on Amazon, he rips the lid off a system that chews up innocent people and spits them out. This isn't fiction. This is his fight. From a false arrest to a $10 million lawsuit to a full-on push for real change, like ending qualified immunity and creating a motorist bill of rights. Don't Flush is about what happened, but it's also about what's next and how one person took an injustice and turned it into action. With this book, you'll learn how you can join the fight. If you care about freedom, fairness, and holding power accountable, order your copy of Don't Flush, available on Amazon and Kindle, paperback, and Kindle Unlimited. Don't wait. Order it, read it, and stand up. Don't Flush from author Dakari Larriett on Amazon.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Dakari Larriett. Dakari Larriett, everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode of Same Cast Different Day podcast.
thank you so much for having me, Anthony.
So, we're going to be discussing his book, Don't Flush, along with the Alabama Solution. And we're going to be talking about his campaign also during this time we're going to be chatting here. So, to kick things off, let's just talk about Benton Harbor, Michigan, April 10th, 2024, around 3:02 a.m. You want to tell the people what happened? What was going through your
Yeah,
mind?
I was driving while black through the state of Michigan and basically apprehended by Michigan State Police, subjected to 7 sobriety tests in the cold. And you said April 10th, that's winter in Michigan. And gaslit the entire night and told that I was running red lights, that I was apparently under the influence of alcohol. Then it moved to marijuana. I was handcuffed, taken to a local hospital. I actually tested negative for alcohol on the spot. They didn't tell me until I asked. And then when we get to the jailhouse, they accused me of smuggling drugs into the jailhouse by way of ingestion and forced me to use the restroom publicly in front of the booking officers and the troopers. And that then became the name of my book, Don't Flush, which was what the trooper George Kanya yelled at me as I used the facilities publicly. And I've been fighting for justice from that day for a year and a half.
So,
And
go ahead.
and every single branch of government has failed me, all the way up to Governor Whitmer's office, uh, who I met with 3 times, my local representatives, the police officers that I tried to file a police report with against the police laughed at me, and the judge who just dismissed my case. So that's where we are now. We're sitting at the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and hoping for an opportunity to share this story and hold those troopers accountable.
So, when you said they were accusing you of smuggling the drugs into the jailhouse, who did they thought you were going to give the drugs to? Like, you just a random black person driving down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, who am I smuggling drugs to in my stomach at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like,
Wild, absolutely wild. So what happened is they put me through like a body scan or something like TSA, I
mhm.
guess, to ensure that there was no contraband coming into the facility. And they just kept putting me through. And that's another thing we don't talk a lot about, like excessive testing and things like that that folks are subjected to within incarceration. And I went through that machine, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I don't know how much X-ray I was exposed to that night. And anyway, they thought that they saw something in my stomach. And this is the trooper. This is not like a skilled technician. So he probably just didn't know how to read the machine. And he said, "That looks like a bag of drugs in my stomach. Confess now, or you'll face a trafficking charge as well."
So when they were scanning you, did they give you like the cape thing? There's like this cape thing that you're supposed to put on to prevent, the radiation exposure. Because I was told that one of my friends who work in healthcare, she was like, there's this cape they put on, especially from around men, because they do too many X-rays to cause them to become sterile and not
Mm,
it. So I was like, did they put the cape over you, or they just sent you
absolutely
for
not.
X-ray? Oh wow.
Absolutely not. And because they couldn't determine whatever the anomaly was in my stomach, they just kept putting me in the machine, putting me in the machine. They send me back to the jail cell, bring me back, put me in the machine again. And finally, a woman came on to a shift, and she seemed like she actually knew what was going on. And she looks at it, she just goes, "Oh, that's gas in his stomach. He has gas. Those are
That
gas bubbles."
that's and it and
And
they
that was
took
it.
this was
That was it.
hours and hours and hours of being there, and they're
Testing.
scanning you, and they took for this one woman to come in and be like, "Yeah, that's gas in his stomach." Like,
Yep. No
and
apology, nothing.
so Michigan didn't think like if we're going to have something like this, we can bring where the police officers can bring somebody in to be scanned. Like maybe we should have somebody on staff 24 hours a day that can actually read these scans, these X-rays.
Yeah, I think it was like a trainee that was working and he didn't know what he was doing. It was 3 AM, so it was probably like B shift, but it was just a complete breakdown in competence the whole night.
So let's talk about for the people who don't know how it is. Can you explain to people what it is to be black while driving at night?
It's terrifying, and I talk a lot about it in my book about how you follow all the rules. You make sure you have your paperwork and you make sure that you, for example, cruise control. Like you do not go over if you're on the highway. You're
Mhm.
very, very cautious at your stops, and there's a full stop. You don't make rolling stops, things like that. So it's very academic. And I've been told I drive like an old man, and I'm like, I don't want to be pulled over. And
Mhm.
I was successful in not having negative interactions with the police until this happened at 42 years old.
Yeah, I've been criticized too, talking about yeah, we ride with him. We know we're gonna get there safe because he drives safe. And I still insurance
Right.
company still tracks my driving, so yeah, I got to make sure that I keep my insurance rates low.
Yeah, true. Right, exactly. Same.
So, for black men or black people in general, at traffic stops can be very dangerous for us. In your book, you give a detailed description for people who don't know or understand. Can you describe what it's like going through what's going through your head during the traffic stop? Because you mentioned some things that I believe your grandmother or your grandfather told you where you were told to keep your hands visible, don't make sudden movements, speak clearly and respectful, and no matter what, stay calm and stay alive.
Yes. So that is probably the biggest disconnect for non-black folks is when they see a trooper, when they get pulled over, for them, it's a nuisance. They're trying to get somewhere, right?
Hmm.
For us, this is a life or death moment. And that's based upon everything we've seen on TV, anecdotally. Like we know that this is a life or death moment for black men in particular. And with that said, yes, it's a generational discussion. We talk about the talk's been going on in my family for 60 years. I talk
Mhm.
about at the very beginning of the book and compare my stop to my grandparents' altercation with the KKK in 1957 in Birmingham and how similar the interactions were. And the flashing lights, I compare that to the squad car lights and the burning cross that they saw as they approached Birmingham. So, one of the things that we try to do is, as much as possible, make the interaction public, but that's very difficult to do at 3 a.m. So, what I did is stopped in a well lit area at my friend's home. But what caused me panic was that the trooper asked me to walk to the dark end of the alley. And I legitimately believed that I was about to be shot and murdered in the dark end of the alley. So imagine being asked to do 7 sobriety tests and they're trying to intimidate you and anger you, and you think that those are your last moments on the planet. So that's what's going through my mind. And I talk very heavily about that moment.
And you also mentioned in the book, like, so you said the black officer around on scene. You was like, oh, there's some kind of relief because there's a black officer on scene, but it turned out to be a totally different experience for you.
Yes, yes, yes. So Trooper Okai um, came onto the scene. He approached from the passenger side of the car,
Hmm.
and it's very dark. A lot's going on. I'm interacting with Trooper Kenya on the driver's side. So I didn't really notice him
Hmm.
until after I had done the 7 sobriety tests. So a lot of that I pieced together from my friend's experience and the body cam. But ultimately, what we learned was that when we got separated, my friend and I, he was asking my friend if the car even belonged to me and where I got it from. And my friend told me that by text message, probably about at the hospital, because I did have access to my phone at the hospital. So imagine within 45 minutes. So, like, crystal clear, very recent, contemporaneous memory, right?
Hmm.
Fast forward 5.5 months, we get the body and dash cam. That conversation with my friend is redacted because that would have been the proof of the racial profiling.
Oh,
We also saw in the body and dash cam the troopers attempting to plant drugs into my vehicle. And that's when the whole story went viral. I uploaded the video to YouTube, and the media got a hold of it, and it just ballooned into millions and millions of views throughout the state of Michigan and even USA Today.
yeah. These troopers don't sound like, how can I put it? Very smart criminals, because if you're going to try to plant drugs in somebody's car, wouldn't common sense would be to turn off your body cam or cover up the body cam, do something, but instead you just blatantly did it on the body cam, and yet the judge's like, yeah, there's not enough evidence of racial discrimination, and let them go. I find that very, very disturbing.
It's shocking. And essentially, this is what qualified immunity does. It is such a huge loophole, and we've got to get it eliminated. Essentially, what the judge said was that I was suspicious for driving at 3 a.m. Okay. So that's for
Mhm.
probable cause. So it's all after that, pretty much anything they do is quote unquote justified. Then there's an allegation that I was running red lights or making rolling stops that I deny, my friend denies. I believe that the video does not show that at all. And furthermore, the video has not been authenticated, meaning the video we received back and sent to our audiovisual analyst is missing metadata. It's redacted in parts that are inconvenient for the police. We suspect the discussion around drug planning at the back of the squad car was missed in the editing office because there's so many different videos. You have both of their body cams, you have 2 angles of the car. It's very easy to get confused and send things that you don't mean to send. So I think that's what happened there. They probably did intend to redact it further.
That should be against the law for them to try to redact the videos like that. You would think it would be like, if this is a case of, somebody's freedom on the line, like that shouldn't
Right.
be a thing that a police department or should be able to do it in general. Nobody should be able to do that in general.
So we've not seen any of the video inside the jailhouse. So the whole public restroom, public defecation moment, none of that was released to us. They found a loophole in Michigan state laws to withhold it. The yelling at me, um, the accusation that I was trafficking drugs by way of ingestion and confess now, they've withheld all of that. So I think again, it was a mistake that they sent us the parts that they did. And yes, it should be illegal. That is why we're suing for our day in court. And with that, we would have a full discovery process where we would get access to everything. So justice is being denied now because of this qualified immunity.
Wow. So I want to talk about grandparents for a quick second. So just like you, my grandparents grew up they were born and raised in the South. My grandmother was born in the 20s, and my grandfather was born in the 30s, but they both moved up to the North in the 50s. So a lot of people find it hard for me when I say like my grandmother was born 57 years after slavery ended, and then my grandfather was born 60 years after it ended. So there's this whole thing like they don't understand why older generation is so scared of being around white people and all these other kind of things. And then you talked about in your book how your grandparents growing up in the South and your parents growing up where they was burning crosses. You had the church bombing. You had all these other kind of things that was going on that would put the fear into black people. And what do you say to those people who just quite don't quite grasp like how it is growing up during that time and the struggles that black people went through during that time to get where we are today?
I say that it's recent history and it stays in folks' memories. And I frankly feel that it flows through my veins and it's how I got through the experience. Thinking about their resistance and how they were able to remain calm in situations like that and extrajudicial, right? I'm in my situation at least interacting with someone who formally is titled as police officer. So we can't expect people just to wake up one day and say, oh, everything's fine. And that's what I think is so frustrating when I hear about things like challenges to the Voting Rights Act.
Hmm.
We're not in a good place yet. We barely just got through 250 years of slavery, then Reconstruction and Jim Crow and the Civil Rights era. And folks are trying to make an argument, oh, let's stop discussing race. Well, race was the story for the last 400 years.
Hmm. So you just mentioned the Voting Rights Act. So you talked about how your parents would take you to every election, no matter how small it was, and that's one thing we talk about on this podcast is making sure that everybody go to every election, no matter how small it is, because every vote count. And people don't believe me because I'm in my early 30s, almost mid 30s, and they're like they don't understand the fact that I'm the first generation in my family that was born since the Civil Rights Act, since the Civil Rights came to an end and the Voting Rights Act was put in place. Because both my parents were born in 1960. All my uncles, aunts and uncles was born in the 40s and 50s. So they kind of didn't have the freedoms that I had growing up. And a lot of people don't can't really grasp like how is it that you're the first generation born since slavery since the Civil Rights Act. And that brings me to like, you know, Gen X, and also I was like raised with like Gen X what's the word I'm trying to think of? I was brought up almost like a Gen Xer, but yet I still have the thinking skills of a millennial somewhat. So it's almost like what I'm trying to say is like when we think about these things and the Voting Rights Acts being put into place, and now we got people that says I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't matter. What do you say to those people? Because like basically our parents and grandparents fought for us to have the right to go out and vote that was denied to us for years and
Yeah.
generations. So what do you say to those people?
Well, they would not be gerrymandering if the votes didn't matter, right?
Mhm.
They would not be making it so difficult for people to show up and participate and creating all these obstacles if it didn't matter. And I strongly encourage people to read books like Black AF History and understand just how powerful our votes are and were, in particular, when you think about the Reconstruction period when we had supermajorities in the South and we took control of Congress. So we've diluted a bit. Obviously, many folks moved up with the Great Migration out of the South, but we can do a lot when we are together and voting and participating in the process.
Just like black dollars can do a lot too with this economy.
Yes. Trillions.
when they
Exactly.
when they talk about boycotting these large companies and stuff like that, I never thought about how much of the black dollar goes into keeping this economy afloat the way that it does.
Yeah.
And I want people to really consider it. So when they say, "Hey, we're going to go on a strike," we need to band together and do these strikes, y'all. Let's make this change happen.
Yes. We've got to vote with our dollars and pocketbooks.
Hmm. So you mentioned people in your book. You mentioned people like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland. When Black people have police encounters, we think of them, and these are recent situations. Why do you think these situations still happen, and do you think it would ever change?
Plus a lack of accountability and qualified immunity and cultural issues. Because think about it, we don't get on these podcasts and talk about how bad the police, or rather the fire department is.
Hmm.
It's a cultural issue that has to be addressed within police forces. And one of the things that I'm pushing for is a motorist bill of rights, which outlines our interactions with the police, provides protections, ensures transparency. For example, body and dash cam, I believe, should be offered to the principal, to the family in real time, no cost, uploaded to a neutral cloud after incidents happen. And that allows the family, a public defender to access it and really determine what happened. And I think it holds the law enforcement accountable and it proves their innocence if they did not do anything wrong. So that's what it really boils down to, is an issue of transparency.
I've never thought about when you said that when you don't hear about fire departments us on podcasts talking about fire departments. I never thought about that. Like I
No,
in the time
it's
I've
a
been
different
doing
culture.
this podcast, I have never one time mentioned about a fire department being, racist or I wow. You just blew
Mhm.
my mind with that one. I've
It's a
never
totally
thought
different
about
culture
that.
of service when you see uh, a fire person. It's the energy is very different, right?
Yeah.
If you ever walked by a station, the camaraderie of them, their interaction with the public, how do we study that and replicate that where people feel like it's a service and it's somewhere you can go when you need help?
Mhm.
And frankly, that's the vibe I get when I think about police outside of America. So when I'm in Canada, when I'm in Europe, I feel like
Mhm.
this is someone who wants to help me. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily feel that here in America.
Yeah, overseas, like other countries, they don't have a shoot first policy. Now that I think about it, and then on top of that, you will see them try to do other ways to try to detain people other than just pull out their gun and start shooting at a
De-escalation,
person.
yeah. So we
Yeah.
have an issue with de-escalation and transparency here, and it is a shoot first, ask questions later mentality in many forces here in the States.
Yeah, that's something that definitely needs to be changed. And then to go back to what you said about the fire department, firefighters and the fire department. Now that I think about it, like anytime I have had an interaction with the fire department, they are the most friendliest people ever. Like they don't never seem upset or unhappy. Like they are always like friendly. I've
Yeah.
never I like really so in your book, you mentioned the word fruity. What does that mean to you? And what does that carry with you when somebody says that to you or refer to you as that?
Well, in the moment, I was just so nervous. And if you watch the video, you can see I can barely talk at moments. My
Mhm.
throat's closing up. It's cold and it's just incredibly nerve-wracking to be questioned like that, interrogated when you thought you were just going to drop someone off and go home.
Right.
So the trooper begins asking if I've had alcohol. I confirm that I have not. And then he's like, "Oh, I smell it on your breath, something fruity like." And then he continues saying it like it's smelling fruity in here and something else, and you're smelling fruity. And I talked about this with my friend after, and that was what upset him the most. He immediately felt that was a homophobic slur. And maybe a day or two after the incident, we found the trooper's social media and realized that he had posted dozens of transphobic, homophobic, racist, misogynistic posts, and it all started to connect when I saw that. So it was hurtful because that is something here in the South that we used to hear. And it, as I said in the book, is second only to faggot. And
Mhm.
it's so hurtful and demeaning.
So in your book, you talked about growing up as a Jehovah Witness, and you struggled with your sexuality as a teen. What do you have to say to teens now who are struggling with their sexuality when they're trying to bend their religious beliefs or whatever, or how can
Yeah.
I say it? When they're trying to bend their religious belief, or they try to live up to their religious belief, but yet they're struggling with their sexuality.
Mm. There's so many more resources for them now. And there's so many other religious homes as well. So I now practice as part of United Methodist, which are completely inclusive, and it's been an amazing experience. But I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and it was very, very different. I guess I really want to address the parents. We have a responsibility to our youth. And if we just look at this objectively, LGBT people and youth in particular have a very heightened rate of suicide, and it's because of this lack of acceptance. So, our first priority is to take care of our kids. We've got to separate the religion from that. The religion has to be a personal choice. And that's what I think the problem is. And I, as a Jehovah's Witness at the time, as a kid, I didn't know that there were other options or religious homes. In fact, I took 20 years away from religion when I left the faith because I just couldn't reconcile participating in any religion as a gay person because I had been taught for 20 years of my life that that was problematic. So I guess my message for the youth is that it gets better. There's so many resources that they have today. Suicide is never the option, and you are perfect the way you are.
Love that. Let's talk about just policy and what that means to a person that is black or brown. So,
Mhm.
in your book, you said it's another word stretched over generations of oppression. Um, it has always been its policy that they could, not give black or brown people, over time generations like house loans, car loans, anything that will regard to them like moving up in class. They find some type of policy to stop them from being able to do things. Can you describe what that it means to your family or just to black people in general out there who kind of, or
Mhm.
people who just don't know how that word feels when they hear, oh, it's just policy that I can't help you.
It allows people to wash their hands of accountability, of ethics, and there's so many examples. You just think about slavery was legal for a very long time.
Hmm.
Then the whole Nazi Germany regime,
Hmm.
mistreatment of Jewish people and other minorities, that was legal. And I think the most pressing example now is what's happening with ICE and these roundups. Like, is this really who we are? So the whole point of that discussion in the book was to help people think about how do you see bigger than this is the law? How do you think bigger and use your own internal locus of control and think about ethics and values and principles and push against laws that you find to be unethical? And I think about here in Alabama, the legislator recently passed by an overwhelming majority HB 202, and that is
Mhm.
the qualified immunity expansion. So it's called Back the Blue. And it not only provides expanded qualified immunity for police and law enforcement, but also for corrections officers.
Wow.
And is that ethical when the state has spent $57 million in the last 5 years defending corrections officers from abuse and torture of incarcerated people? That seems like a cover up, right? It seems like
Right.
a cop out. That doesn't seem like an ethical law to me. So that's what I wanted people to think about, because it's very easy and simplistic to get into this black or white of, well, this is a law, this is a policy. Um,
So another thing that I wanted to discuss um was when your ID came in the mail, what went through your head? Because you already been denied by all these different courts, and I think you were denied by all these different courts by this time, or this was like months and months later when you kept requesting your ID. What went through your head when you saw we opened up that piece of mail and your ID was in there? And I believe you said you had to walk around with like a paper ID too.
yeah. So just as a background on that, I didn't realize it at the moment, but my driver's license was confiscated when I went into the jailhouse. And when I'm checking out of the jailhouse the next day, I'm gathering all of my belongings, my phone, my wallet, and I'm thinking, oh, where is my ID? And that's when I learned that the trooper, George Canyon himself, had taken it. And they told me that I need to call him and that after 2 weeks, my drug test results will come back, which is ridiculous. 2 weeks, right? And at that point in time, I can get my license. So I am calling and emailing the troopers, the police department every week. What's the status? What's the status? What's the status? And every time it's, oh, we don't have it yet. We're working on it, which made me just very suspicious. Like, what are you working on? He's either pass, fail. And by that time, within one day, my cousin in law enforcement here in Alabama told me, go to urgent care and get your own drug test result. So I already had a 12 panel showing that there was nothing in my system. So I'm just like, what are you working on? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, no formal driver's license. I have this piece of paper that basically looks like I committed a crime, like a provisionary. And then 2.5 months later, no communication, nothing. Now, keep in mind, they know everything about me. They have my email, they have my phone number,
My
they have
phone
my
number. They have my
address in
address
Alabama.
in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to mail my driver's license to my old address in Michigan. So it's bouncing around,
Mm-hmm.
knowing full well I did not live in Michigan. I get it. And there's no explanation or anything. It's literally a white piece of paper wrapped around my ID. So I was incredibly thankful to have it, but
Mm-hmm.
just shocked at the cruelty. And I think the cruelty was the point.
So when you just so you, I remember you said like so I'm in my head I was like you said it took them 2 weeks and then you got called for like 2 weeks for this drug test that you said it should have been simple pass or fail. I know they do. I know there's such thing. This was 2024, so I know they have rapid drug tests that they
Yeah.
could have did and been a pass or fail. So in your book, you mentioned that they were like using that time to like try to build a case against you to prove that you were just guilty or something. And there's so many people who didn't have the means to fight these cases. They just took a plea deal or just pled guilty because they just had the means to fight for when they're being accused of things that they didn't do that they're innocent of.
Right.
And when you got out of jail, you had this amazing team of people who worked with you and told you and about step by step of what are the things that you can do. Can you tell the people about that, them people, and the steps that you guys went through and took to get this case moved through the different channels you had to go through?
Yeah. So, as I said before, I had not had a negative interaction with the police before this moment at 42 years old. So, I have a cousin in the FBI, a cousin in Homeland Security, and a cousin in Birmingham Police Department. So, I had an amazing group of people that I could bounce ideas off of. And
Mhm.
then I had two lawyers. So, my DUI attorney essentially went through my drug test results and what I told him of the incident. He called the prosecutor, had the whole thing dismissed within a matter of days. So I was never even arraigned, and that was that. So then it immediately flipped to us going after the police and holding them accountable. And I filed an internal complaint, and they did their whole kind of sham investigation. They cleared the two troopers in a three-sentence letter and said there was zero wrongdoing and everything was handled per policy. But it was very interesting intake discussion. They asked, "Did you get your own drug test? And what was the result?" And at that moment, I realized, oh, they were actually thinking about planting, or rather manipulating the drug test results. So this was before we got the FOIA evidence back.
Mhm.
Okay. So they wanted to know, did you get your own test? And what were the results? They were looking for a way to justify everything that had happened that night. So here we are now. We're suing civilly, and we are in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, meaning we are one step below the US Supreme Court, and we're not going to stop until we get our day in court and hold these troopers accountable.
All right. And by the way, before I continue, for those of you watching the video version of this, if you scan that QR code in the corner of the screen right there, that'll take you to the link to be able to purchase his book, Don't Flush. So make sure y'all check out that book. It's a good read. So this experience has led to you running for U.S. Senate, and now, if you now there's another QR code up there that you guys are scanning. It will take you to his website where you can donate and also check out his campaign. So this led to you running for U.S. Senate. Can you explain to people why this really drove you to doing this? What kind of changes do you want to do as a Senate? Because we right now there's a whole bunch of craziness going on in our government, especially with the Epstein files, which we're waiting on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, let us know about what your intentions are with running for U.S. Senate.
It is born out of frustration. After the incident happened, we discussed. I've tried to do it the legal way. I've tried to get justice through the courts. I have tried to get justice through my legislator. I've met with Governor Whitmer's office 3 times. I literally tried to file a police report against the police, and I was
Mhm.
laughed at. I have been cyberbullied by folks connected to Michigan State Police since this
Mhm.
incident. And again, the police would do nothing. And contrition to Michigan laws around cyberbullying. So the system has failed me so many times. And I finally said, you know what? I need to position myself in a way that I can administer justice and that I can write the laws to defend people and prevent this type of thing from happening again. And that's where my motorist bill of rights came into being. And it's on my website, DakariLarriett.com. That is one of the signature bills that I am pushing for. And then I just started speaking to folks in Alabama and throughout the nation around their pain points and realized there's so many systems and processes that just seem to be failing all of us. So education, healthcare, the economy. And that was really where the campaign started. I started just talking to friends and finally they said, you've got to run. You've got to do this and bring some attention to these critical issues that are deficient in our country.
So Let's switch over to the Alabama solution because this ties in also to your campaign and running for U.S. Senate. One of the things I have wanted to point out is the state of Alabama has the after watching this documentary because I was unaware of the whole prison system in Alabama and what have happened. I knew nothing about the strike that happened down there within the
Mm,
prison system until I watched this documentary. And one of the first things that stood out to me is one how corrupt it is, and then two, Alabama has the most incompetent governor I have ever seen in such a long time. Like worse than the governor of Texas who says he's going to put a tariff tax on people that's moving from New York to Texas. Like just
yeah,
the
heard that.
craziness that's going on. So what Alabama has the most dangerous prison system and is known for covering up these things. So when you discovered this or found out about this, like what went through your head when all this stuff started coming to light about the Alabama prison system?
Oh, it was so hard to hear. Part of the things that one of the things I've been doing is just traveling the state
Hmm.
and meeting with people and understanding what their concerns are. So I ended up meeting with a group called the Alabama Appleseed, and they advocate for, in particular, senior citizens that have been incarcerated for like decades, nonviolent, and who should really be released. And I
Hmm.
started learning more about how problematic the system is. I had no idea. And it really starts from that education.
Hmm.
So after those discussions with them, I was invited to a hearing at the Alabama State House. So that is where the legislator meets. And then
Hmm.
I was invited to speak. And I shared my story of a broken criminal justice system up in Michigan and how I did not want that to happen in Alabama.
Hmm.
And I started to meet families. I started to meet folks who you see in the documentary. I sat next to a man whose son was murdered in an Alabama prison. I had never had an experience like that before. And that's why I learned that the documentary was being made. So this
Hmm.
is well before it came out on October 10th, I believe. This was
Hmm.
back in the spring. And from there, I started promoting the documentary because I wanted everyone in our state and beyond to be aware of what was happening so that we could drive accountability. Because the original claim against the state actually happened under the first Trump administration. So this is a longstanding issue. And yes, you can't even make that up. It was the first Trump administration that sued the state. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, because so for those you don't know, so the Alabama prison system, they had a 70% drop and people being paroled out. They had no rehabilitation program set up for prison inmates. They were living in horrible, very horrible conditions. You had prisons security guard, what they call them? I forgot what they called them. Prison
Corrections
security
officers,
correction officers beating people nearly to death.
murdering.
Well, they actually did murder someone. Stephen Davis was one of those people. And seeing his story during watching the documentary and how he was very unrecognizable when he was they when they I believe it was his cousin or somebody that took a picture of him in that hospital bed. He was very unrecognizable. They have a very high rate in murders, suicides, overdose, all these kind of things, and yet we have the Alabama government who just refuses to acknowledge this problem and try to fix it. And only thing they tried to fix was instead of having all these different prisons, we're going to build three maximum security prisons and then call it a day. Like that's not a solution. So for you, what are some things you would do to work towards trying to fix this system,
Mhm.
this broken prison system in Alabama?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's called the ALDOC, Alabama Department of Corrections, but that's not what's happening. And we've got to look at the whole thing end to end. One, stopping the inflow of drugs. You saw that scene that was just horrific where everyone's clearly under the influence and overdosing. We've got to provide drug treatment. And I kind of lean on my experience in harm reduction at the National Harm Reduction Coalition that we don't criminalize that, we provide treatment. It's a health
Mhm.
issue. Then life skills. So what we're seeing is the leasing of prison labor, which is a very horrible part of Alabama history. In the book Black AF History, it talks about how at one point the leasing of prisoners was like 70% of our economy. So it's still a significant piece of our economy, specifically in the big food industry
Mhm.
and fast food and and yard work, as you
Mhm.
saw literally a prisoner is doing the yard work, I believe, at the governor's mansion. So these are individuals that should be considered for parole. If we
Right.
trust them to handle our food and to work at the governor's mansion, but they're not being released. And that is causing the overcrowding and the violence and the commingling of violent individuals with nonviolent first offenders, which creates, again, this escalated rate of death. So in 2024, 277 people died in our prisons. The biggest categories are murder, suicide, and overdose. So it's just a horrible human rights violation. So we've got to find ways to reintegrate folks into society. We've got to do a legislative review end to end and make sure that nothing unethical is happening with these businesses that are so tied into the prison industrial complex. And I want to put in place an oversight board that brings the families that you saw in the documentary,
Mhm.
brings them into the discussion, allows them to fully investigate these matters and hold the Department of Corrections accountable.
So one of the things that kind of like stood out to me with the whole with the Alabama solution was it was modern day slavery is what I saw, and the fact that a lot of Alabama's produced goods relied on these prison systems, I find it's just like what are we doing? Like we should be doing modern day slavery, and then they play clips of like radio personalities talking about how these people in jail don't deserve to have rights and all these other different kind of things. Like they're human.
Yeah.
Whether I'm incarcerated or not, I still deserve basic human rights, which they were not getting. Like they had prison what was it little areas in the prison where it was like water all over the floor, and it looked like a refugee camp. That's what it reminds me of, like a refugee camp in some third world country. That's what it looked like these people were living in. And it makes me want to look at like other prison systems around the country. Like, is this going on? Is this going on in my state here in Wisconsin? Like, it's like you just don't know. And it's almost like how if you were a normal everyday person, what would you tell them people? Like, what can they do
Yeah.
if they want to put forward the steps or try to help what's going on within the prison system? Like, what can they do to help those in the prison system who just need to be reformed and have the need the sources to be rehabbed to put back into society? Now, if you're a nonviolent criminal, I feel like you should be able to go back into society. One of the men in the documentary, he said he got arrested for breaking and entering and got 15 years in jail.
Mhm.
And I've
Mhm.
never heard of something like that before. And it seems like Alabama is handing down these harsh sentences to very petty crimes.
Mhm.
So for those people, that want to do something to help the system, what can they do to help? And then my second question for you after that is going to be like, what are things that can be put forward to um to stop this cycle? What's going on?
Well, we've got to advocate from the outside. And now we know. And I'm so appreciative of the documentary and the visibility it brought to the matter. So we have been having viewing parties throughout the state. So this documentary came out a month ago and it's still happening throughout the state. Every city that I travel to in Birmingham, I'm seeing free screenings of it.
Mhm.
And I'm so hopeful that it wins awards and then that triggers a nationwide visibility to what's happening and a pressure campaign to do better by our Alabamians. And when I started my campaign, I said, I want to improve the lives of all Alabamians. That includes incarcerated people, people who are uh, related to these individuals, these families. This is a matter of human rights. And I think if the emotional piece doesn't strike you, Okay. But let's talk about the financial piece. $57 million spent since 2020 defending corrections officers. That's our money that could go into schools, that could go into roads, infrastructure, broadband, rural hospitals. So that's a horrible spend of money. And then think about all the businesses and individuals that are getting rich building these mega prisons and leasing of labor, but we get to pay for the prisoners, right? So as taxpayers, it's about $60,000 a year per incarcerated person. And then these individuals that are 60, 70, 80 years old that did a nonviolent crime a generation ago, that cost escalates to about 100,000 a year because it's essentially a nursing home prison for them. So we're paying their health care. So think about it like that. That's why we have such a high incarceration rate. There is no pathway to parole, and individuals are getting very rich with the system.
All right. Dakari, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I know we had some mishaps with getting this interview done, but I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show. And don't forget y'all to go check out his book, Don't Flush. Make sure y'all go get that book. You scan that QR code over there in the corner, and it'll take you right to his book. And don't forget to check out his campaign. And head over to his website to donate. And like I said before, if there's anything you need during this campaign trail, I'm here for you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. The website's DakariLarriett.com. Follow us on social media. And we're also looking for volunteers. So we'll be looking for volunteers coast to coast to do phone banking, starting up probably around the beginning of the year to
Mhm.
drive that get out the vote. And I think we have a real opportunity here in Alabama to get to work for everybody.
So all his social media links will be linked at the bottom. We could just click on it and head over to his social media pages where you could check him out and help him out on his campaign trail. And let's get him elected into the U.S. Senate, y'all.
Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. And we'll be right back after this.
I know you're grieving, but I want to tell you that your son was murdered. They sweep stuff underneath the rug all the time.
If you're an inmate in Alabama prison, you're probably praying every night that nothing bad happens to you. It's dangerous and volatile. It can at any moment.
I mean, it's corrupt. That's all you can say.
We're finished. What are we finished with? Film me. Why?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hold on a minute. Police in here.
Oh, okay.
Don't talk.
We had record numbers of people leaving out of here in body bags. They don't want the public to see what's really going on the inside.
How can a journalist go into a war zone but can't go into a prison in the United States of America? The state is settling one lawsuit after another. There's no consequences for their actions.
It's not the inmate that's killing them folks. It's the guards.
There's an argument that there is some systemic problem within all of our facilities, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
How can you defend this?
That one guard, he knew something. I could tell he was a liar.
We are going to pursue it based on the facts to the fullest extent that we're allowed.
Their biggest fear is to see us come together on one accord. We got to take our power back. We have to come together and make a stand that our life is worth something.
I came to prison in 1985. I know what these folks will do.
We have been taking life and death risk to get this information out, but we still can.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Alabama Solution that's on HBO Max that you can stream at any time. So make sure you guys head over to HBO Max and check out that documentary. I highly recommend it. I want to thank Dakari Larriett for coming on the show. Make sure you guys check out his campaign, check out his cause. Make sure you guys go and buy his book, read the book. They got an audio version of the book, so make sure you guys check that out. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode a Same Cast, Different Day podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Y'all have a good one and enjoy your Thanksgiving.